We are tracking the latest with Hurricane Idalia as it's expected to rapidly intensify before making landfall in northwest Florida early Wednesday. So here's where Idalia is sitting right now. It just kind of brushed Cuba overnight, southwest of Florida, and really starting to intensify now. It has an organized eye wall, which it did not have yesterday, and it did become a hurricane overnight after being a tropical storm. Showing up now on the Key West radar, you can see that defined eye wall spinning, and so this is why we're expecting it to rapidly intensify now. It's more organized, it's moving over very hot water. Remember, the waters of the Gulf, they're about 90 degrees, and it's moving into an area with less shear, which is a good thing for hurricanes, unlike severe thunderstorms. So we have a huge area of hurricane warnings, basically from Tallahassee down to Tampa. And Tampa probably won't see the biggest hurricane impacts as far as wind goes, but it is going to see storm surge, and we'll break down some of that here in a second. But remember that you don't want to pay attention specifically to a line or the line within the track or the cone, because that's just an average of the models. Hurricane Center always stresses, look at that cone of uncertainty, because those are the possible areas. And even so, it's not impossible to get out of that range. This is just the most likely range of scenarios rather than paying a specific attention to a very specific line or path. But it is going to bounce around the Atlantic coast after it crosses Florida here. So Georgia, South and North Carolina also affected. And the reason we have that cone forecast rather than a straight line path is because there are several different possibilities. This is looking at all the different models, and while they're generally in agreement, there is enough of a shift where it has some uncertainty there, and it makes a big difference in something like a hurricane, because this is looking at the maximum winds around the eye wall. They only go out anywhere from 50 to 75 miles generally. So if you shift the track a little bit, it has a big impact. This is an example of the NAM versus the Euro making landfall early tomorrow. The NAM has Tallahassee getting smacked with over 100 mile per hour winds, but the European model, which is just a little further southeast, has much lighter winds. So it's the difference between hurricane force or tropical storm force winds. But there is going to be a ton of rain as well. Still looking at the potential for up to a foot of rain for some areas here, especially in the panhandle northwest parts of Florida here, with a widespread half foot of rain. And storm surge is going to be a major issue too. And this is where Tampa will see some big impacts. Maybe we'll miss the hurricane force winds, but still looking at a substantial storm surge of 4 to 7 feet. And if you know the geography of Tampa Bay, it's a very easy area to flood. Tropical storm force winds will affect a large area too, so that will affect much of northwest Florida, including the Tampa area. Likelihood of tropical storm force winds, which does damage, knocks out power, and you combine that with the rain and the storm surge, so those are some definite impacts. Tropical storm force winds probably arriving on the west coast of Florida later today into the evening hours, and then especially through the overnight. And those hurricane force wind probabilities, that's a much narrower area, but still there are some possibilities if things shift just a bit that places like Tampa could be more affected. Now the trend in the models over the last 24 hours is a shift a little bit westward, and the Hurricane Center is kind of compromising that westward shift with previous forecast tracks. So a lot could still happen. We're watching it rapidly intensify today before it makes landfall early Wednesday.